Emily Carson stood under the flickering neon sign of the bus stop, rain drizzling around the halo of her cheap umbrella. Another long day at the diner was behind her, and all she wanted was to get home to her little girl. The city lights blurred in the puddles on the sidewalk, and she shifted from one aching foot to the other while balancing her worn backpack on her shoulder. Her bus was late. Again. Frustrated sigh escaped her lips as she glanced at her watch. Nearly 7 p.m. If the bus didn't arrive soon, she'd be late picking up Lily from the neighbor who babysat after preschool. The thought of her daughter's big brown eyes waiting anxiously made Emily's chest tighten. She had to be on time. At last, the city bus lumbered up to the curb with a wheeze of brakes. Emily stepped forward, joining the small queue of tired commuters. As she climbed the steps, fishing for her transit card, she noticed an elderly woman ahead of her struggling in the aisle. The woman's hands trembled as she rummaged through a delicate embroidered purse. I swear I had it in here," the lady murmured in confusion. Behind her, the driver's impatience was evident in his terse tone. "Ma'am, do you have your fare or pass? There are others waiting." Emily felt a pang of empathy. The woman was slight and well-dressed in a tailored navy coat, her silver hair styled in a tidy chignon. She looked out of place on this crowded city bus. Other passengers groaned or jostled, irritated by the delay. Emily's own nerves were frayed from the long day, but she couldn't ignore the old woman's distress. Without hesitating, Emily gently touched the woman's arm. "It's okay, take your time," she said softly. To the driver, she added, "Here. I've got it." She quickly swiped her own transit card a second time, paying the fare for both of them. It cost her a precious few dollars she couldn't really spare, but the relief on the older woman's face was worth it. "You didn't have to do that, dear," the woman said, voice quavering with gratitude as Emily helped her find a seat. "It's no trouble," Emily replied. She offered a reassuring smile while guiding the woman into an open spot next to a window. Emily remained standing, gripping a metal pole as the bus jerked back into motion. They lurched through traffic, the interior lights casting a dull glow on weary faces. The city night pressed in beyond the graffiti-scratched windows. Emily glanced down at the elderly woman. She sat clutching her purse tightly on her lap, knuckles pale. Though her expression had calmed, there was a flicker of confusion in her eyes as she looked at the passing streets. "Are you heading somewhere in particular?" Emily asked gently over the engine's drone. The woman looked up, lips parted as if embarrassed. "I was trying to get to Marlowe Avenue," she said. "My son's house. But I got turned around." Her refined accent and careful enunciation hinted at a life far removed from public buses and downtown bustle. Marlowe Avenue. That was an affluent part of the city, Emily recalled, a far cry from the cramped apartment where she and Lily lived. No wonder the lady seemed disoriented. "We're headed in that direction," Emily offered kindly. "I can help you find it." She knew the bus route well, every stop and turn memorized from years of commuting. Guiding a lost grandmother to her destination was the least she could do. The woman exhaled, closing her eyes briefly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't usually go out alone. My son, he usually arranges drivers for me." A small, sad smile touched the older lady's lips, as though she were remembering something bittersweet. "But sometimes a person just needs a bit of independence, don't you think?" Emily nodded. She understood needing independence all too well. As a single mother with a stack of responsibilities, she prided herself on managing life without asking for help. "I get it," she said softly. "Everyone needs a break now and then." The woman studied Emily with a sudden clarity that belied her confusion. Moments before. "What's your name, dear?" she asked. "Emily Carson." "Thank you, Emily. You have a kind heart." The woman patted Emily's hand with her gloved one. Not many would stop to help a stranger these days. A faint blush warmed Emily's cheeks at the praise. She brushed a damp strand of brown hair behind her ear and shrugged lightly. "I'm just glad I was here," she replied. It was true. How many others had just pushed past this poor lady? The thought left a sour taste. After a few minutes of bumping along, The bus reached the stop nearest to Marlowe Avenue. Emily helped the woman up and signaled the driver to wait an extra moment as they descended the steps onto the sidewalk. Rain had lessened to a mist, but the evening air was cold and carried the scent of ozone and pavement. Marlowe Avenue was just around the corner, lined with stately townhouses and old-growth trees. Under a flickering street lamp, the woman hesitated, peering down the dim residential street. "Which house is yours?" Emily asked gently. She kept one hand lightly on the lady's elbow, worried the unsteady sidewalk might trip her. Before the woman could answer, bright headlights swept over them. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb almost silently. Emily stiffened as two large men in dark suits emerged with urgent efficiency. They moved straight toward her and the elderly woman, steps swift and purposeful. A spike of alarm shot through Emily. Were these men trouble? Instinctively, she shifted to partially shield the older woman, her grip tightening protectively. One of the men, broad-shouldered with a buzz cut, spoke first in a low, controlled voice. "Ma'am, we've been searching everywhere for you." Relief and worry battled on his face as he addressed the lady, ignoring Emily entirely. The second man swept a suspicious gaze over Emily. The woman sighed, a mix of exasperation and guilt. "I'm sorry, Frank, I only went for a short walk and then—" "You should have informed us," the second man interjected, his tone more reproachful. Emily's eyes darted between them, and realization dawned. These weren't muggers or random thugs. They were bodyguards. Everything about their stance and subtle formation screamed professional security. The older woman turned to Emily with an apologetic smile. "These gentlemen work for my son. He worries too much." Frank, the one with the kinder face, finally acknowledged. "Emily, Miss, thank you for staying with her," he said, polite but guarded. "We can take it from here." The other guard gently took the lady's arm from Emily's, the woman, however, resisted briefly. "Just a moment," she insisted. She reached out and clasped Emily's hands in both of hers. Despite the fine leather of the lady's gloves, Emily could feel a slight tremor. "You have been so kind to me, Emily," the woman said, her blue-gray eyes earnest. "I didn't even ask. What about your own plans? I hope I haven't inconvenienced you." Emily shook her head quickly. "Not at all. I'm just glad you're safe." The adrenaline of the brief scare was ebbing, leaving her heart pounding and legs a little shaky. She glanced at the imposing car and then back at the woman. Who exactly was her son, to warrant personal security and a town car? As if reading her thoughts, the lady smiled knowingly but didn't elaborate. Instead, she gave Emily's hands one last squeeze. "How can I repay you, dear?" "That's really not necessary," Emily protested. "It was only a bus fare and a short ride. I'm happy I could help." The woman's gaze softened further, as if she was both grateful and sad. "At least tell me your full name. I'd like to properly thank you later." It's Emily Carson," she said, feeling a little self-conscious under the scrutiny of the bodyguards and the curious situation. "Emily Carson," the lady repeated as if committing it to memory. "I truly hope we meet again, Miss Carson. You've done more for me than you know." Before Emily could respond, the guards began ushering the woman toward the car, one opening the door for her with deference. The night seemed to swallow them. The extravagant vehicle, the silent guards, and the mysterious woman, leaving Emily suddenly alone on the quiet street. She stood there for a moment, the drizzle misting her cheeks, heart still beating fast. The whole encounter had been startling and surreal. Only when the Mercedes' red taillights disappeared around the corner did she realize she'd forgotten all about the time. With a gasp, Emily spun on her heel and hurried back towards the bus route. She was dreadfully late now. As she jogged through the puddles, one question kept echoing in her mind. Who on earth had she just helped? By the time Emily reached her apartment building, she was soaked from the knees down and shivering. The chipped paint on the stairwell, walls and the faint odor of stale smoke. In the hallway were a far cry from the pristine, tree-lined luxury of Marlowe Avenue. But it was home. She unlocked the door of apartment 3B and was immediately greeted by small arms wrapping tightly around her legs. "Mommy!" You're late." Lily's voice was equal parts excitement and accusation. Emily dropped her damp backpack and scooped her 4-year-old daughter into her arms. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she murmured, kissing Lily's soft cheek. The bus was slow. Over Lily's shoulder, Emily mouthed an apology to Mrs. Garcia, the kindly neighbor who sat on the threadbare couch. Mrs. Garcia waved it off, standing up with a wince and a hand on her lower back. "No trouble at all, mija," the elderly neighbor said kindly. Lily was an angel as always. "We had a tea party, didn't we, Babita?" She pinched Lily's cheek lightly, making the girl giggle. "Thank you so much," Emily sighed, both gratitude and fatigue heavy in her voice. She walked Mrs. Garcia to the door and handed her a folded $10 bill, her thank you, for the overtime babysitting. It left her wallet almost empty. But she couldn't take the older woman's help for granted. After bolting the door, Emily turned to find Lily looking up at her with big eyes. "I'm sorry I was late," she repeated, crouching to Lily's level. "Were you scared?" Lily shook her head, her dark curls bouncing. "No, but I missed you." That simple declaration squeezed Emily's heart. "I missed you too," she said softly. She pulled Lily into a warm hug, holding on a moment longer as the stress of the evening finally began to ebb. In that embrace, the strange events on Marlowe Avenue felt a world away. Later, after a quick dinner of boxed macaroni and cheese at the tiny kitchen table, Emily tucked Lily into bed. The apartment was quiet. Rain pattered gently against the single living room window. Only then did Emily's thoughts drift back to the elegant, older woman on the bus and the men in suits. Who was that lady? Her clothes, her poise, and the way those bodyguards had appeared. Emily's instincts whispered that she had brushed against a world far different from her own tonight. As she curled up on the lumpy sofa with a threadbare blanket, Emily's gaze landed on the stack of overdue bills on the coffee table. Electric, water, Lily's preschool fee. The sight made her stomach twist with familiar anxiety. She'd been barely making rent and keeping the lights on with double shifts at the diner. Paying that stranger's bus fare was a small act of kindness, but in the harsh light of her budget it wasn't negligible. Still, Emily couldn't bring herself to regret it. The poor woman had been so lost and confused. Emily sighed and rubbed her tired eyes. She could still see the woman's relieved smile and hear her cultured voice. "You have a kind heart." No one had said something like that to her in a long time. Just as Emily's eyelids grew heavy, a memory flashed. Those men in black suits, addressing the woman with such urgency. "We've been searching everywhere for you." A mother hen sort of worry tugged at Emily's mind. Had the woman gotten a scolding from her son for wandering off? Was she all right now? She fell asleep wondering, the question lingering as she drifted into dreams. The next morning, a Saturday, dawned cloudy but dry. Emily woke to Lily bouncing on her bed. "Get up, Mommy." "Pancake day," Lily announced, her grin toothy and bright. Emily laughed groggily and surrendered to her daughter's enthusiasm. Every Saturday, if she wasn't working the morning shift, they made chocolate chip pancakes, a small tradition that filled their tiny home with the comforting smell of batter and syrup. Soon the savory sweet aroma of breakfast and the sound of Lily's animated chatter chased away the last of Emily's residual unease. In the daylight, the prior night's encounter almost felt unreal. It was only after cleaning up the dishes that she noticed something on the floor just inside the front door. A white envelope stark against the peeling linoleum, as if it had been slipped through the mail slot. Frowning, Emily picked it up. It was heavier than junk mail, the paper thick and expensive. Her name was written across the front in beautiful, flowing calligraphy, Miss Emily Carson. Her heart gave a curious little flutter. She didn't receive fancy letters, only bills and the occasional charity flyer. Who? With growing intrigue, Emily tore open the envelope carefully. Inside was a folded note card engraved with an elegant crest at the top. The script matched the envelope. Mrs. Catherine Moretti requests the pleasure of Miss Emily, Carson's company, for an afternoon tea. Today at 3 p.m. Moretti Estate, 22 Marlowe Avenue. Emily read it twice. Mouth slightly agape. Mrs. Catherine Moretti. It had to be the woman from last night. The one she'd helped. The note was an invitation. Her first instinct was astonishment. That the woman had gone through the trouble to find her. Her second was a jolt of anxiety. 22 Marlowe Avenue was likely that mansion she glimpsed in the dark. The Moretti estate. Emily had heard the name Moretti before in passing. Was it in the news? Perhaps from the diner's regulars gossiping about the city's elite. She tapped the edge of the card against her palm, indecision churning. It felt like a doorway was suddenly opened to her, a doorway into a world of wealth and maybe answers, about the mysterious woman and her son. But did she dare step through? The practical part of her whispered that it might be safer to leave this alone. People with bodyguards in mansions usually didn't mix with people from rundown apartments. Could there be strings attached? Mommy, you okay? Lily's small voice cut through Emily's thoughts. Emily realized she had been standing frozen by the door for a couple of minutes. She forced a smile and scooped the little girl into her arms. I'm okay, baby. Mommy just got an invitation from a friend. Lily's eyes widened with excitement. Is it a birthday party? Will there be cake? Emily couldn't help but laugh softly. Not a birthday, just tea. She set Lily down and glanced at the clock. It was already 10 a.m. She had about 5 hours to decide and get ready, if she was going to go at all. Her fingers tightened around the stiff invitation card. A quiet afternoon tea with a lonely older woman sounded harmless on the surface, and Mrs. Moretti had seemed genuinely kind and interesting. Still, Emily recalled the intense gaze of the guard and the expensive car. There was something unusual about the Morettis, no doubt. The invitation felt like a shiny apple, enticing, but possibly hiding a worm. In the end, curiosity and gratitude won out over caution. Emily reasoned that she owed the woman at least a thank you for the invitation. Maybe it really was just a simple gesture of appreciation, nothing more. Decision made, Emily suddenly confronted a more mundane problem. What to wear? In her closet, the options were limited. She owned exactly one dress. That might be considered semi-presentable for a tea. It was a modest powder blue frock she'd found on clearance 2 years ago, worn only to a parent-teacher meeting and once to church on Easter. She pressed it and laid it out on the bed, pairing it with a cardigan to hide a tiny stain on the shoulder. As she dressed, nerves fluttered in her stomach. This was crazy, wasn't it? People like her didn't get invited to estates for tea. A knock on her bedroom doorframe made her jump. Lily stood there with her favorite stuffed bunny. Where are you going, Mommy? Can I come? Emily knelt to smooth her daughter's curls. She hated leaving her on a weekend, but the invitation didn't extend to a rambunctious 4-year-old. Not this time, honey. Mommy has to go meet someone. You'll stay with Mrs. Garcia for a little while, okay? I'll be back by dinner, Lily pouted. But when Emily gave her the all-important job of assistant pancake taste tester with Mrs. Garcia, her mood brightened. By 2:30 p.m., Emily had dropped off Lily next door and was descending the steps of their building. She felt the prickle of self-consciousness, wearing her best outfit in broad daylight on her block. Neighbors hanging out on the stoop eyed her curiously. She rarely took cabs, couldn't afford them, but she couldn't risk being late to the Moretti house. Taking the bus in a nice dress somehow felt out of the question, so she splurged on a taxi. The ride across town left her watching the meter anxiously, but she arrived at Marlowe Avenue with 15 minutes to spare. The cab let her out at the foot of a long wrought iron gate. Beyond it, a curving drive led through immaculate grounds to a house that looked even more impressive in daylight. It was a mansion of pale stone and glass, elegant yet imposing. Emily approached the gate uncertainly, half expecting someone to stop her. Instead, the gate clicked and swung open on its own the moment she neared. A chill of surprise skittered up her spine. They were watching, cameras most likely. Of course. Heart pounding with nerves, Emily walked up the driveway. The manicured gardens flanking, the path were bursting with late summer roses and neatly trimmed hedges. It was the kind of property you'd see featured in lifestyle magazines. She felt a world away from her little apartment and second-hand furniture. But she lifted her chin and reminded herself, She had as much right to be here as anyone. She was invited, after all. At the massive front door, oak wood with ornate iron accents, Emily paused to take a steadying breath. Before she could knock, the door opened with a soft click. A middle-aged man in a crisp black suit stood there. He had the air of a proper butler, down to the impassive expression and impeccable posture. "Miss Carson?" he asked. "Yes," Emily replied, her voice coming out quieter than she intended. The butler stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. "Welcome. Mrs. Moretti is expecting you in the garden. May I take your coat?" Emily shrugged off her light cardigan, grateful she'd decided to wear it to cover her dress's thin fabric. Handing it to the butler, she managed a polite smile. "Thank you. Sir?" He gave a courteous nod. "This way, please." As Emily followed him through the grand foyer, her senses nearly overwhelmed. The interior was breathtaking. Vaulted ceilings with intricate molding, a chandelier sparkling overhead, floors of polished marble that clicked under her sensible flats. Every piece of furniture, every painting on the wall, spoke of old money and refinement. It was like stepping into a different era, or a movie set. Emily couldn't help but marvel at a large portrait above the staircase, an oil painting of a stern-looking, older man who might have been a patriarch of the family. Catching herself gawking, she quickly refocused. The butler led her through a sunlit hall toward the back of the house. They passed at least 2 closed doors with modern electronic keypads, discreetly mounted beside them. Heavy doors locked tight. She wondered what was behind them. It was an odd detail in an otherwise classical home. What needed that level of security? Before she could dwell on it, they emerged onto a flagstone terrace and into the garden. Afternoon sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating a neatly arranged tea table under a striped canopy. A spread of delicate pastries and a teapot set out on fine china waited there. And beside the table, rising with graceful poise, was the woman from the bus. Today, Mrs. Catherine Moretti wore a tailored ivory sweater and a long skirt with a subtle floral pattern. Her silver hair was swept back elegantly, and her face lit up when she saw Emily. "Emily, dear. You came," she exclaimed warmly, extending both hands in welcome. Despite her nerves, Emily smiled. The genuine delight in the older woman's voice set her slightly at ease. Emily stepped forward and accepted the woman's hands in hers. "Thank you for inviting me." "Mrs. Moretti, I hope I'm not underdressed," she said, glancing self-consciously at her simple attire. "You look lovely," Mrs. Moretti assured her. She gave Emily's hands a squeeze before guiding her to the table. "Please sit. I've been looking forward to our chat. And call me Catherine, won't you? Formality makes me feel ancient." Emily obliged, sitting down on one of the cushioned wrought iron chairs. Catherine Moretti certainly didn't look ancient, despite probably being in her 70s. There was a vitality in her eyes now that last night's lost confusion was gone. Catherine poured the tea, and the rich scent of Earl Grey with a hint of bergamot filled the air. "I must apologize for the dramatic scene yesterday," she said gently. "I gave my son's men quite a fright." Emily took the delicate china cup, offered to her. "I'm just glad you got home safely," she replied. "I hope you didn't get into too much trouble for that." Catherine laughed softly, a melodic sound. "Oh, I got an earful, trust me. My son can be a worrywart." She rolled her eyes fondly. "I snuck out for a simple walk and ended up at a bus stop without my wallet. Next thing I know, I'm being scolded like a teenager." Emily chuckled, trying to imagine an imposing figure chastising this refined lady. "He cares about you a lot." "Yes, perhaps too much at times," Catherine said with a sigh. "But let's not talk about me. I want to know about you, Emily. Tell me, how is that sweet daughter of yours?" "Lily, was it?" Emily's eyebrows shot up in surprise. She realized she must have mentioned Lily in passing during their brief bus ride conversation. Or perhaps Catherine had asked the night before, and she'd answered without thinking. That Catherine remembered the name touched Emily. "She's great. A bit pouty I couldn't bring her along. Emily admitted with a smile. 4 years old and already way too smart for me. They shared a laugh. Catherine's interest seemed genuine as she guided the conversation gently. She asked Emily about her job at the diner, about Lily's favorite toys, about how Emily managed on her own. It should have felt intrusive coming from a stranger, but Catherine's empathetic nods and occasional relating of her own experiences, as a young mother long ago put Emily at ease. There was an unspoken understanding in the way Catherine listened, like she admired Emily's determination and hard work. Time passed faster than Emily expected. She nibbled on a buttery scone, relaxing under the rose-scented breeze and easy conversation. For a short, blissful while, she forgot about overdue bills and bus schedules. Still, not everything felt completely normal. Out of the corner of her eye, Emily noticed figures moving at the edges of the garden now and then, gardeners or staff perhaps, always at a polite distance, and once she thought she saw the glint of a camera lens in an upstairs window of the house, as if someone might be watching. It sent a slight chill through her. Maybe her imagination. She decided she must be feeling self-conscious in such unfamiliar surroundings. Catherine noticed her shiver. "Are you cold, dear? Would you like a shawl?" "Oh, I'm fine," Emily said quickly, just taking in how beautiful this place is. Catherine's eyes wandered to the house, an unreadable expression flickering across her face. "Thank you. My son has invested a lot in security and privacy. It can feel like a sanctuary." She paused, then added quietly, "And sometimes a prison." The words hung in the fragrant air. Emily wasn't sure how to respond. She set her teacup down carefully. "I suppose for someone well-known, it's hard to go out freely," she ventured. Catherine gave a little nod. "Yes, harder for him than for me. I think that's why I cherish simple moments like yesterday's adventure." She smiled ruefully, even if it did cause a stir. Emily bit her lip. She couldn't deny her curiosity. With a tentative voice, she finally asked, "Mrs. Catherine, if you don't mind me asking, what does your son do? I mean, I've heard the name Moretti somewhere, but I can't place it." Catherine's gaze sharpened slightly, and for a moment Emily worried she'd overstepped. But the older woman simply looked thoughtful. "My son is in business," she answered carefully. "Real estate, shipping, various investments. The Moretti name comes up in financial news sometimes." "I suppose." It was a polished answer, but something about the way she said it sounded like half the truth. Emily didn't pry further. She sensed a gentle evasiveness, as if Catherine wanted to keep those details at bay for now. "Regardless," Catherine said, reaching across to pat Emily's hand, "I'm so grateful our paths crossed. You were a blessing when I felt quite alone and invisible out there. I'm glad I could help," Emily said, meaning it deeply. She hesitated, then blurted softly, "I was a little worried about you, after I left. I'm relieved you're okay." Catherine's face softened into pure warmth. "That is incredibly sweet, my dear." Before she could say more, a sudden motion drew both of their gazes. At the far end of the garden, beyond a row of rose bushes, a tall figure had appeared on the terrace. Stepping out from the house, Emily's breath caught involuntarily. Even at a distance, there was no mistaking the commanding posture of a man who expected the world to bend around him. He was on his phone, speaking in a low voice that carried a hint of impatience, one hand gesturing slightly as if emphasizing a point. Though his face was partly turned away, she could see he was in a crisp charcoal suit, tailored to accentuate broad shoulders and a lean form. Catherine's fingers tightened on Emily's hand for a brief moment. "Oh dear," she murmured under her breath. "He's home much earlier than I thought." The man, Catherine's son, clearly, finished his call and slipped the phone into his jacket pocket. Then he turned in their direction, as if sensing their eyes on him. Even from across the lawn, Emily could feel the intensity of his gaze. Dark hair, chiseled features, and an aura of quiet authority. The air almost crackled around him. He did not smile or call out a greeting. He simply observed, his stance going still. Instinctively, Emily straightened in her chair, She wasn't sure why, but her heart had begun to thud against her ribs. Catherine quickly rose, urging Emily up with a gentle tug. "Perhaps it's time I see you out, dear," she said in a hushed tone. There was an unmistakable note of urgency and apology in her voice. Emily stood, confusion swirling. "Did I do something wrong?" "Not at all," Catherine assured, guiding Emily back toward the terrace and the house. The tea party was clearly over. "It's just better if you go now. I promise we'll talk again soon. And please don't think poorly of my son. He just—" "Mother," a deep voice called from behind them, cutting through Catherine's words. Emily and Catherine halted. Emily's pulse jumped into her throat as she turned toward the source of that commanding voice. Catherine's son had crossed the distance with unnerving quietness. He now stood just a dozen paces away, hands in his pockets, assessing them. Up close, Adrian Moretti was even more striking and intimidating. He looked to be in his early 30s, tall and fit, with a strong jaw shadowed by a day's stubble and eyes the color of obsidian. Those eyes flicked to Emily, cool and unreadable, before returning to his mother. "Am I interrupting something?" he asked, tone polite but with a razor edge beneath. Catherine offered a pleasant, if tight, smile. "Adrian, darling, I didn't expect you yet. This is Emily Carson, the young woman I told you about, the one who helped me yesterday." Adrian's gaze locked onto Emily again. She felt pinned in place by that look, as if he could extract all her secrets in an instant. His lips curved in a faint facsimile of a polite smile. "Miss Carson," he said evenly. "How fortunate that you were there for my mother." Emily swallowed, finding her voice under that heavy stare. Anyone would have done the same, she managed, though she knew that wasn't entirely true. She extended a hand, belatedly remembering manners. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Moretti." He made no move to accept her hand. The awkwardness hung thick. Emily's cheeks flushed and she withdrew her offer, mortified. Catherine cleared her throat delicately. "Emily was just leaving. We had a lovely tea, but she has a little girl waiting at home." At the mention of Lily, Emily blinked and nodded. "Yes, I should be going," she struggled, to maintain her composure and forced a polite smile at Adrian. Up close, his presence was almost overwhelming. He radiated confidence and power in a way that made her both anxious and a tiny bit breathless. Adrian stepped aside and gestured subtly toward the house. "Allow me to walk you to the door. Miss Carson, it wasn't really a question. And it certainly wasn't warm." Emily felt her stomach flip with nerves. "Thank you," she murmured. Catherine squeezed Emily's arm gently. "We'll chat again soon, dear," she said, her eyes conveying apology and something like worry. Emily gave a slight nod, trying to silently reassure the older woman that everything was fine, even though her own nerves were jangling. Adrian fell into step beside Emily as they entered the house. The butler appeared as if from nowhere, ready with Emily's cardigan. She slipped it on, grateful for a layer between her and the chill creeping up her spine. They walked in silence through the grand foyer toward the front door. Emily's mind raced for something civil to say, but all she could focus on was the subtle tension radiating off the man at her side. He finally broke the silence as they reached the entry. "Miss Carson, I appreciate your kindness to my mother." The words were courteous, yet his tone held an undercurrent that made Emily unsure if it was gratitude or admonishment. "It was no trouble at all," she replied quietly, eyes on the polished floor. For a moment, Adrian said nothing. The butler opened the heavy door, and mild afternoon air drifted in. Emily stepped forward, ready to flee this stifling exchange. Then Adrian's voice came softly from behind her, low enough that the butler pretended not to hear. "One should be careful accepting invitations from strangers. Miss Carson." She turned her head, looking at him in surprise. Was that concern or a veiled warning in his tone? Those dark eyes studied her face intently. Emily wasn't sure how to answer. Her heart thumped an erratic beat. Adrian inclined his head in a faint nod, something like satisfaction, flickering in his gaze that she didn't finish her sentence. Good day, Miss Carson. It sounded remarkably like a goodbye and a dismissal in one. Emily swallowed hard and forced a polite smile. Goodbye, and thank you again, she stammered, not even certain what she was thanking him for. Escorting her out, perhaps. He did not smile back. The corner of his mouth twitched, and Emily wasn't sure if it was the start of a frown or just impatience restrained. Feeling thoroughly out of her depth, Emily stepped across the threshold onto the porch. The door closed behind her with a gentle thud, its echo leaving her oddly unsettled. She walked down the long driveway, heart in her throat, only letting out a breath once she was beyond the gate. As she stood on the sidewalk waiting for the next bus, she couldn't afford another cab. Her mind whirled. Adrian Moretti was as imposing as a storm cloud. Charming was not a word she'd associate with him. No, his polite facade barely masked a controlled intensity, a suspicion she felt keenly, though she didn't understand why. She replayed his parting remark about strangers. Was he implying she should be cautious of his family? Or that his mother should be cautious of her? Neither interpretation sat well. The bus pulled up and Emily climbed on in a daze. As it rumbled away from the rarefied world of the Moretti estate and back toward her own neighborhood, Emily's confusion only grew. One thing was clear. Her quiet life had suddenly taken a turn into the unknown. And as much as she wanted to pretend nothing had changed, Emily had the distinct feeling that the events of this day were only the beginning. The following week, Emily tried to settle back into her routine. Morning rushes to drop Lily off at preschool, long hours serving customers at the diner, evenings helping with finger painting or reading bedtime stories. She told herself that the brief brush with the Morettis was over. Interesting, yes, but not part of her world. Yet, despite her efforts, she couldn't fully shake it from her mind. Late at night, as she folded laundry or balanced her checkbook, she would recall Catherine's kind smile or the haunted look in Adrian's dark eyes. On Wednesday afternoon, the lull between the lunch and dinner shifts at Mel's diner found Emily wiping down tables and humming along, to the old jukebox tune crackling. In the corner, the bell over the door jingled, and she glanced up from behind the counter, expecting one of the regulars. Instead, a young man in a charcoal suit stepped in, looking distinctly out of place among the faded vinyl booths and checkered floor. He carried a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. The few patrons in the diner barely gave him a glance, but Emily's stomach did a tiny flip of apprehension. He scanned the room, then walked up to the counter where she stood. "Emily Carson?" he inquired politely. Her heart pounded. Up close, she noticed an earpiece coiled behind his ear, partly hidden by cropped blonde hair. This was no ordinary deliveryman. He had the same alert, broad-shouldered stance as the bodyguards she'd seen at the estate. "Yes, I'm Emily," she answered warily. He set the parcel on the counter. "Delivery for you." His task done, he gave a curt nod and exited swiftly, leaving before she even managed a thank you. Emily stared at the package. It wasn't very large, perhaps the size of a shoebox, but heavier. Her name was written on top in neat black ink, no address or postage. Clearly hand-delivered, likely from the car idling outside the diner that she now noticed through the window. With a cautious breath, she peeled off the brown paper. Inside was a plain black shoebox. She lifted the lid and gasped softly. Staring up at her was a thick stack of cash, $100 bills wrapped with a band. On top lay a small white envelope. Her fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. A single folded note was inside, with crisp, bold handwriting that slanted across the page. "For your help and discretion. A. Moretti." Emily's face heated up. Discretion? The meaning was clear. This was payment, perhaps even hush money from Adrian. Blood rushed in her ears. There had to be several $1,000 in that stack, far more than enough to wipe out her late bills and buy Lily new clothes, even pay a few months' rent. The sight of so much money in her hands was dizzying, but the implication behind it made her stomach churn. He thought she had helped Catherine for some kind of reward. Or worse, he thought she'd go gossip about them unless paid off. The assumption stung her pride like a slap. She snapped the lid back on the box and shoved it under the counter, suddenly worried someone might see. Her coworker Marisol was eyeing her curiously from the kitchen pass-through, but Emily forced a neutral expression and mumbled something about a personal delivery. For the rest of her shift, the box remained tucked away, burning a hole in her thoughts. Each time Emily recalled the note, help and discretion, her indignation grew. How dare he? She never asked for this. By the time the sun began to dip and her shift was ending, Emily had made up her mind. She wasn't going to keep a cent of that money. Whatever Adrian Moretti thought of her, she would show him he was wrong. She didn't want his hush money, his charity, none of it. Marisol gave her a concerned glance as Emily hastily changed out of her syrup-stained uniform and into jeans and a sweater. Everything okay, hun? You look steamed. Emily mustered a tight smile. Just need to take care of something important. Mari, I'll see you tomorrow, okay? She left the diner with the shoebox, clutched in a white-knuckled grip inside a plain grocery bag. Dusk settled over the city, and with it, Emily's resolve hardened. She would go to the Moretti estate and return this in person. Mailing it back felt too risky. What if it got lost or stolen? She didn't want that on her conscience. And frankly, a part of her wanted to see Adrian's face when she gave back his presumptuous payoff. Catching a bus to the upscale side of town in her casual clothes got her some skeptical looks, but Emily was beyond caring. Her heart thudded as she pulled the cord for the Marlowe Avenue stop. Night was falling as she approached the familiar wrought iron gate of the estate. Unlike last time, it did not swing open on her approach. She pressed a button on an intercom panel and looked up at the security camera perched atop the stone pillar. Surely they recognized her. For a moment she thought they might ignore her entirely. Her nerves jangled as she imagined guards dragging her off for trespassing. But then a staticky voice came through the intercom. Miss Carson, state your business, please. She cleared her throat, trying to sound calm. I'm here to see Mr. Moretti. I need to return something to him. The gate buzzed and clicked. With a wrought iron groan, it began opening. Emily steeled herself and walked through before she lost her nerve. Halfway up the drive, she saw two silhouettes emerge from the front door. Men, tall and unmistakably armed, from the way their jackets bulged at the sides. The evening light glinted off one man's earpiece as they strode toward her. Emily's pulse kicked into overdrive, but she held her chin high. She recognized one of them, the guard named Frank, who she'd met the night she helped Catherine. Miss Carson, Frank said, his expression a mix of surprise and caution. We weren't informed you were expected. I apologize for showing up like this, Emily replied, keeping her voice steady. But I need to give something back to Mr. Moretti. It won't take long. The second guard, who had a severe crew cut and a less friendly demeanor, eyed the grocery bag in her hand suspiciously. What's in the bag? Emily inhaled. The money Mr. Moretti sent me. I'm returning it. Frank's eyebrows lifted. Clearly this was not a common occurrence. The two guards exchanged a brief, unreadable look. I'll have to check with Mr. Moretti, Frank said. He gestured to Crew Cut to stay with her and pulled out a phone, stepping a few paces away to make a call. Emily's heart thumped wildly as she stood under the watchful eye of the remaining guard. The estate was eerily quiet behind its walls, the only sound the distant chirp of crickets awakening in the manicured hedges. In less than a minute, Frank returned, slipping the phone away. Follow me, he said simply. They led her not through the grand front entrance this time, but around a side path to a smaller door. The guard opened it and motioned her inside. Emily stepped into what appeared to be a lavish study or office. The scent of leather and a faint trace of cigar smoke hung in the air. Her eyes were drawn to a massive mahogany desk near a window, illuminated by the golden glow of a banker's lamp. And standing behind the desk, finishing a pour of amber liquid into a crystal glass, was Adrian Moretti. He looked up at her entrance, his expression impassive. He was tieless tonight, the top button of his dress shirt undone. His suit jacket hung neatly over a chair. In this more casual state, he seemed slightly less forbidding, if a panther lounging. instead of prowling, could be considered less dangerous. "Miss Carson," he said, setting down a decanter. "This is unexpected." Emily could feel the guards hovering just outside the door, giving a semblance of privacy but ready to intervene if needed. She clutched the bag tighter and stepped forward, mustering her courage. "I'm sorry to intrude," she began, her voice trembling despite her resolve, "but I thought it would be best to return this." Directly, she placed the grocery bag on the edge of his polished desk and withdrew the black shoebox, setting it down between them. Adrian's eyes flicked to the box, then back to her face. He betrayed no surprise, no emotion at all. "You came all the way here to give back a gift?" he asked coolly. "Gift?" Emily repeated, a touch of anger breaking through her fear. "I'm not sure what you call it, but I'm not comfortable accepting money for something that required none. I helped your mother because she needed help, not for a payoff." Adrian studied her silently, the quiet stretched, heavy with tension. Emily's heart hammered. Her outburst could very well end, whatever thin goodwill existed here. But she pressed on. "And discretion?" she added, heat rising to her cheeks. "That note made it sound like you're paying me to keep my mouth shut. I have no intention of gossiping about your family. Mr. Moretti, why not take it?" He interrupted softly, swirling his drink in one hand. The ice clinked. "It's a lot of money for someone in your situation, or so my understanding goes." Emily felt that like a punch to the gut. Of course, he'd likely looked into her, found out she lived paycheck to paycheck. Her pride smarted, but she lifted her chin. "Because I'm not a charity case, and I'm not a grifter," she said evenly, though her voice shook. "I won't be paid for doing the right thing." Adrian set down his glass with a decisive thud. In 2 strides, he came around the desk, suddenly invading her personal space. Emily instinctively stepped back, only to feel the solid wall behind her. She hadn't realized she'd let herself be cornered. He didn't touch her, but he might as well have for how his presence pressed on her senses. Up close, she saw faint lines of strain around his eyes, the intensity within them burning. "Miss Carson, do you have any idea what kind of people my family is accustomed to dealing with?" he asked, voice low. She swallowed hard. I'm getting an idea," she replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. He almost smiled, but it was a cold, razor-thin thing. The kind who would have taken that money and asked for more. The kind who see a vulnerability and exploit it. His gaze bored into her. "My mother isn't lonely. She's far too trusting. And you appearing out of nowhere with your good Samaritan act." "Act?" Emily bristled, anger mixing with her fear. "You think I helped your mother as some kind of scheme?" He arched a dark brow. "Did you expect me not to consider it? A random stranger just happens upon Catherine Moretti, heiress to one of the largest fortunes in the city, and altruistically asks nothing in return?" Emily's face went hot. "Believe it or not, yes. I didn't know who she was. I was just doing what decent people do." Her hands were clenched at her sides, nails biting her palms. Adrian's jaw tightened. He was so close now that a strand of his midnight hair fell forward near his brow. Emily's breath caught. She could smell a hint of expensive cologne and something else. Attention like ozone. His next words were measured, each one sharp. "Miss Carson, decency is a luxury in my world. One I cannot afford. I look at facts. And the facts are, you helped my mother. You accepted an invitation here, and now you show up unannounced at my door." His eyes flicked to the box of money, then back to her. All of which could be perfectly innocent, or a very patient setup. Emily's head spun. "You think I'm plotting something? That I'd use a sweet old lady?" She broke off, pressing her lips together to keep from shouting. Lowering her voice, she continued, "I understand you feel protective of her. But you're wrong about me." They stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Emily refused to drop her gaze, though her heart was beating so loudly she wondered if he could hear it. Finally, Adrian leaned back a fraction, giving her space to breathe. The intensity in his face shifted into something like resignation. "For your sake," he said quietly. "I hope I am wrong. Emily exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Before she could respond, he reached behind her. She flinched, but he was only grabbing the shoebox off the desk. In one swift motion, Adrian shoved the box into her arms. It was so sudden she automatically clutched it. "Take it," he ordered, voice soft but firm. "Consider it compensation for the risk you took helping a stranger on a dark street. Or consider it an insult if you wish. But you will take it, and you will not contact my mother again. Are we understood?" Emily's eyes stung. She wasn't sure if it was fury, humiliation, or a confusing mixture of both. "And what if I don't agree to that?" she whispered. Adrian's gaze hardened to flint. "Then I will be very disappointed," he said, as if that word held the weight of a threat. "And trust me, you do not want my attention on you, Miss Carson. Not any more than it already is." A chill draped down Emily's spine. For all his civility, there was no mistaking the menace behind those words. The air felt charged with danger. She realized then that Adrian Moretti was not just some paranoid rich man. He was something else, something powerful and potentially lethal. Coiled beneath a veneer of sophistication, heart pounding, Emily gave a tense nod. "Fine, understood." Her agreement hung in the air, between them like a fragile truce. Adrian stepped back further and gestured toward the door. "Frank will show you out." She spun and hurried out, the weight of the cash pressing against her like it was full of stones. Sure enough, Frank was waiting just outside. His eyes searched her face, perhaps checking she was unharmed. But he said nothing, simply escorting her down a corridor and out a side entrance to the drive. Within minutes, Emily found herself outside the gates once more, the shoebox still in her hands and her mind a storm of emotions. She sucked in a deep breath of cool night air. Her eyes burned now, not just from anger, but from the sting of tears she refused to shed until safely away. As she started down the sidewalk, one last glance over her shoulder showed a tall silhouette at the study window, backlit and still. Adrian, watching to ensure she left. Emily faced forward and walked faster, each step fueled by indignation and a burgeoning sense of fear. Whatever world the Morettis lived in, she wanted no part of it. Adrian's message had been crystal clear. Stay away. Maybe he was right. Maybe last week's twist of fate had been a fluke best not repeated. Yet as she hurried toward the bus stop, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that it was far too late to simply walk away unscathed. Emily huddled over her mug of coffee, hands still trembling slightly despite the warmth seeping into her palms. Across the table, her best friend Megan watched her with wide, disbelieving eyes. They sat in a quiet corner of Joe's Cafe, a few blocks from the diner. The late evening crowd was thin, and an old jazz tune played softly in the background. Emily had called Megan the moment she got back into her neighborhood, voice shaking enough that her friend had dropped everything to meet. Now that Emily had recounted the entire saga, helping Catherine, the tea invitation, Adrian's confrontation and hush money, and finally tonight's explosive argument, Megan looked equal parts shocked and furious on Emily's behalf. "He what?" Megan nearly knocked over her latte when Emily described the stack of cash and Adrian's ultimatum. That arrogant jerk. He basically tried to scare you off like you're some criminal. Emily managed a weak smile. Megan's outrage was comforting in an odd way. It was terrifying, Meg. One second he was cold but civil, the next, I swear I thought he might actually hurt me. She hated admitting it, but the memory of Adrian's menacing proximity still made her heart race. Megan reached across to squeeze Emily's arm supportively. "Thank God you're okay." "I can't believe you went there alone." "Are you out of your mind?" "I had to give the money back," Emily insisted, though she knew how reckless it sounded now. "I couldn't just keep it, but yeah, walking into the lion's den like..." "That was probably stupid," Megan blew out a breath, trying to steady her own nerves. "Look, Em, you need to cut all contact with these people. This is not some everyday rich family. They've got armed guards, secretive behavior. It screams trouble." Emily bit her lip. "I know. I told him I'd stay away and I meant it. I don't want anything more to do with the Morettis." Even as she said it, A pang of something shot through her, regret. Worry? She wasn't sure. Promise me. Megan pressed, her expression unusually grave. Promise me you won't get mixed up with them again. Rich guys with bodyguards who issue threats? That's not a fairy tale. That's the kind of thing you see in true crime headlines. I promise, Emily said softly. I'm done. I have Lily to think about. The last thing I want is to endanger her or myself. At the mention of Lily, Megan's face softened. How much does she know? Nothing, Emily said quickly. And I'd like to keep it that way. She just thinks I had tea with a nice lady. I'm not telling her anything else. Good. Megan sat back, stirring her coffee absently. After a pause, she asked, What about the money? Did he force you to keep it? Emily grimaced, glancing at the black shoebox at her feet. She had brought it with her from the bus, not wanting to return home flashing that kind of cash around her neighborhood. It now sat tucked discreetly in a canvas tote bag. I tried to refuse, but he wouldn't let me leave without it. Megan let out a low whistle. That's messed up. How much is it? I don't know exactly. Several thousand at least. Megan shook her head in disbelief. So he basically paid you off and said, get lost. Pretty much, Emily said, swallowing the bitterness of the memory. I hate that he thinks I can be bought. And I hate that he might be right about people trying to exploit his mother. It's sad. They were quiet for a moment. Megan tapped a fingernail on her cup thoughtfully. You know, the name Moretti, it's so familiar. My dad used to talk about city council gossip. I think there were rumors that the Moretti family is into some unsavory business. Emily tensed. What do you mean? Megan lowered her voice, leaning in. I mean like organized crime. Mafia stuff. It could just be urban legend, but when I was a kid, there was a headline about a Moretti company being investigated by the FBI. Nothing. Ever stuck, though. They're like Teflon. Nothing. Sticks. A chill crept over. Emily. Mafia. The word hung in her mind with cold dread. If that was true, it explained a lot. The security, Adrian's veiled threats, the sense of danger that seemed to cling to him. She rubbed her forehead. So I basically stumbled into a mob family's path. Megan winced. It sounds crazy when you say it like that. But it fits, doesn't it? Emily, you have to stay far, far away from them now. Promise plus double pinky swear. I will, Emily whispered. Believe me, I want nothing to do with any mafia or whatever they are. But even as she said it, she remembered the look in Adrian's eyes when he'd warned her. The flicker of something, almost vulnerable when she'd called him out on his suspicion. At the time, she'd been too angry and scared to process it. But now she wondered if beneath all that menacing control, he might be lonely too, trapped by the same walls of mistrust that surrounded his mother. Not that it mattered. She wasn't about to go peeling back the layers of a dangerous man's soul. That was a thrill for someone else. Not a single mom with a preschooler and a meager bank account. Megan checked her watch and sighed. I hate to leave you, but I have the early shift tomorrow. You gonna be okay tonight? Emily mustered a more genuine smile this time. Yeah, I'll be fine. Better now that I got to vent. Thanks for coming, Meg. They hugged tightly as they parted outside the cafe. Call me if you need anything. And stay safe, Megan emphasized with a stern look. Back in her apartment later that night, after paying Mrs. Garcia for watching Lily and tucking her daughter into bed, Emily finally confronted the box of cash again. She sat at the kitchen table and counted it out, jaw-dropping as the amount totaled $5,000. $5,000. It was more money than she'd seen in one place in her life. She could pay off every late notice. She could enroll Lily in that better daycare program, or save some for emergencies. The temptation was immense, but taking a cent felt like admitting Adrian was right about her. With a heavy sigh, Emily bundled the money back into the box and shoved it deep in her closet, behind old winter boots and storage bins. She wouldn't spend it, she told herself. She'd hold on to it for now, and maybe one day find a way to give it back or donate it anonymously. For the moment, she just wanted it out of sight, out of mind. Climbing into bed, Emily tried to feel relieved. She had survived a brush with something dangerous and come out intact. Now life could go back to normal. Early mornings, honest work, simple struggles. Yet when sleep finally came, it was restless. Her mind conjured dark eyes and a low voice, warning her to stay away. And behind that, more hauntingly, the kind face of Catherine Moretti, locked in a gilded cage of her own. Emily hoped as she drifted off that the promise she made to stay away was one she wouldn't be forced to break. She hoped fate would be kind enough to leave her alone now. She had no idea how wrong she was. 2 weeks drifted by with no sign of the Morettis, and Emily gradually began to breathe easier. Autumn was settling in, painting the city's trees with strokes of gold and crimson. Her life returned to its familiar rhythm: work, Lily's school routines, an occasional movie night with Megan. If not for the shoebox hidden away in her closet, Emily could have convinced herself those tumultuous days were a strange dream. She hadn't touched the money or heard a peep from the Moretti family. It seemed Adrian had accepted her silence, and Catherine sadly was abiding by her son's wishes. But Emily's heart twinged now and then at the thought of Catherine. The older woman had shown her such warmth, and it felt cruel how things had ended, without Emily even being able to say goodbye or thank you properly. One crisp Saturday morning, Emily bundled Lily into a light jacket and set off to the farmer's market a few blocks away. Lily loved the market's sights and smells, the pyramid stacks of oranges and apples, the local baker's stall giving out pastry samples. It was a free adventure they could share, and Emily relished those simple moments. They were browsing a stand of late-season peaches when Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. Balancing a bag of produce, she awkwardly pulled it out. The number was unfamiliar but local. "Hello?" she answered, adjusting her grip on Lily's hand. "Emily, dear?" An elegant, familiar voice replied. "It's Catherine Moretti." Emily nearly dropped her phone. She tightened her hold on Lily instinctively. "Mrs. Moretti?" "Hello?" she stammered, stunned. "How did you—" "I'm sorry for the sudden call," Catherine said quickly. "I got your number from that invitation list my son had compiled. I had to pull a few strings to get access, but, well, never mind. I hope it's okay that I phoned." "Of course it's okay," Emily said, heart pounding in equal parts joy and worry. She ushered Lily a few steps away from the bustle, lowering her voice. "I've been hoping you were well." A soft sigh crackled over the line. "I am well enough. But I needed to speak with you, darling. Not on the phone. Could we possibly meet somewhere today? Somewhere out of the way?" Emily's eyes widened. This sounded clandestine. Immediately, Adrian's stern warning flashed in her mind. "Do not contact my mother again." Technically, Catherine was the one reaching out, but Emily doubted Adrian would care about the distinction. Yet Catherine's voice held a pleading note that Emily couldn't ignore. "I don't know, Catherine," she began carefully. "What if your son—" "My son is away for the weekend," Catherine interjected, a subtle steel in her tone. "And even if he weren't, I am my own woman. I choose who I spend time with." Then her voice gentled. "Please, Emily. I owe you an apology for how things ended, and, truth be told, I could use a friend to talk to." Emily chewed her lip. In her free hand, Lily tugged impatiently, pointing at a stand that sold homemade ice cream. "One moment," Emily murmured into the phone. She crouched to Lily's level, covering the receiver. "Sweetheart, how about I drop you off to play with Rosa for a bit?" Rosa was Mrs. Garcia's granddaughter, who often visited on weekends and loved entertaining Lily. "Just for an hour, and then Mommy will take you to get ice cream, okay?" Lily pouted briefly, but the mention of her older playmate perked her up. "Okay, Mommy, can I have strawberry ice cream after?" "Deal," Emily smiled, planting a kiss on Lily's forehead. Straightening, she lifted the phone back to her ear. "All right, Catherine. When and where?" Relief was evident in the older woman's voice. "Thank you, dear. There's a quiet little cafe on 8th and Pine, La Viola. Do you know it?" "I think so. The one by the flower shop." "Yes, that's the one. Could you meet me there in an hour?" "I can do that," Emily agreed. "I'll be there." After hanging up, Emily hurried to deposit a delighted Lily with Mrs. Garcia and Rosa, promising extra ice cream later. Her mind raced the whole way to the cafe. She tried to quell the flutter of nerves in her stomach. It felt almost like sneaking around, which was absurd. She wasn't doing anything wrong by meeting a friend, right? Catherine simply wanted to talk. Two adults having coffee. Adrian didn't own either of them, yet she couldn't ignore the risk. If Adrian found out, there would be consequences. But he wasn't in town, Catherine had said. Still, Emily resolved to keep her guard up. La Viola Cafe was a tiny, European-style bistro with outdoor seating and a view of a small park across the street. When Emily arrived, she spotted Catherine at a corner table on the patio, wearing large sunglasses and a silk scarf over her hair, as if trying to be inconspicuous. The sight was almost comical, but also endearing. Catherine looked like a movie star from a bygone era attempting a low-profile outing. Emily approached with a tentative smile. "Catherine?" The older woman lit up and rose to greet her. "Emily. Oh, it's wonderful to see you." Catherine surprised her with a gentle hug, which Emily returned warmly. They sat and ordered coffee, decaf for Catherine, who laughed about her doctor's orders, and a cappuccino for Emily. For a moment, they just took each other in. Emily thought Catherine looked a bit paler than before, a tiredness around her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. Catherine, meanwhile, reached out to pat Emily's hand. "I've been so worried about you, dear. After what happened with Adrian, I wanted to call sooner, but he monitors my communications rather closely." Emily shook her head. "You don't owe me any apologies. I understand he was upset. He was just protecting you." A shadow crossed Catherine's face. "He was rude," she said bluntly, "and overstepping. I love my son, but sometimes he sees enemies in every shadow." She sighed. "I told him he misjudged you, that you're a good person." Emily's cheeks warmed. "What did he say?" she asked softly. Catherine waved a hand. "Oh, he grumbled something about handling it. I didn't know he'd try to pay you off until after the fact. We might had words about that. Let me tell you, the thought of Catherine scolding Adrian on her behalf was oddly gratifying, if a bit mortifying. "I appreciate you standing up for me," Emily said. "It really wasn't necessary, though. I'm fine. Honestly, I never wanted to cause trouble between you two." "You didn't," Catherine insisted. "Our issues run far deeper than this. Adrian just..." She hesitated, stirring her coffee. "He has difficulty trusting anyone, especially new people. He's been hurt before, used by so-called friends angling for money or influence. And the nature of our family's business only amplifies his caution." Emily took a careful sip. She debated internally whether to acknowledge what Megan had suggested. Perhaps honesty was best. Catherine clearly knew what insinuations surrounded their name. "He's not wrong that there could be dangers," Emily said carefully. "Megan, that's my best friend. She told me people say the Morettis, that they might be tied to organized crime." Catherine's eyes met hers steadily. "Would that frighten you away from me?" she asked, a touch of sadness in her tone. Emily swallowed. "I'm here," she replied quietly. "I can't pretend it doesn't scare me a little. But I know you, Catherine. And I think I know enough of Adrian to see that if he's harsh, it's because he thinks he has to be." Catherine looked momentarily impressed. "Perceptive girl, yes. Adrian shoulders the mantle of all that comes with our name. Our wealth was built generations ago in ways not always clean. My husband, Adrian's father, expanded things, made enemies. When he died..." She paused, pain flickering in her eyes. "My son inherited more than just assets. He inherited responsibility, danger, and a legacy soaked in as much tragedy as prosperity." A chill went through Emily at Catherine's words. She realized Catherine was telling her, in a roundabout way, that the rumors were true. The Morettis were a crime family of some sort, and Adrian was at its helm now. "I'm sorry," Emily murmured. It felt inadequate, but she didn't know what else to say. What must it be like to grow up in that world? Catherine gave a thin smile. "Don't be. I just wanted you to have context. You deserve to know it wasn't anything personal, what happened. Adrian was simply doing what he's been trained to do. Suspect and eliminate threats. Emily nodded slowly. I understand. Honestly, after how he acted, I wasn't keen on bumping into him again anyway. She tried to keep her tone light, but Catherine caught the tremor beneath it. The older woman reached over to clasp Emily's hand. I am truly sorry you were treated so poorly. I consider you a friend, Emily, if you'll allow it. Tears pricked Emily's eyes at Catherine's earnestness. She squeezed Catherine's hand gently. I'd be honored to be your friend. They shared a warm smile. For a while, conversation drifted to easier topics. Catherine adored hearing about Lily's antics, and even insisted Emily show her a photo. Emily watched the older woman's face soften at the picture of Lily grinning with a missing front tooth. You must bring her next time, Catherine said wistfully. I'd love to meet your little girl. Emily hesitated. Maybe someday. The idea of Lily near the orbit of the Moretti family made her protective instincts flare. But Catherine's genuine enthusiasm made it hard to refuse outright. They had just decided to split a slice of lemon cake when Emily noticed Catherine's expression change. The older woman's smile faded, and her gaze flickered past Emily's shoulder. What is it? Emily asked, suddenly alert. Catherine removed her sunglasses, squinting slightly as she looked toward the street. I could swear Frank was supposed to be nearby, she murmured. Frank? One of your guards? Emily tensed. Yes, I asked him to discreetly keep watch from a distance. Catherine frowned. I haven't seen him in a while now. Emily's pulse began to quicken. She casually glanced around. A few other patrons lingered on the cafe patio, and pedestrians strolled by on the sidewalk. Nothing seemed overtly amiss, yet Catherine's intuition was clearly pricked. She started to rise. Perhaps we should head back. Before she could finish, two men appeared at the patio entrance. They didn't look like cafe customers. Both were bulky, wearing cheap jackets, and had a hard, scanning look about them. Emily's stomach lurched. She instinctively moved closer to Catherine. One man stepped forward, fixing Catherine with an ingratiating smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. Mrs. Moretti, he said, voice oily. So glad to find you out and about. Why don't you and your friend come with us? Quietly. Emily's blood ran cold. Under his jacket, she glimpsed the outline of a gun holster. These were not muggers interested in their purses. They knew exactly who Catherine was. Catherine stood straighter, a fierce dignity in her bearing. Who sent you? She asked, though her voice wavered just a touch. The second thug smirked. Someone who's eager for a chat with your son? Terror flashed through Emily. This was a kidnapping, right here in broad daylight. She reached for Catherine's hand. Run! Emily hissed, eyes darting. But even as she calculated a possible escape route, a third man emerged from behind them, cutting off the way further into the cafe. They were surrounded. Panic surging, Emily did the only thing she could think of. She stepped, protectively in front of Catherine, arms out. Leave her alone, she shouted, heart hammering against her ribs. The first man's false smile twisted into a sneer. Ah, the good Samaritan. Didn't expect you here, he said, recognition glinting in his gaze. Grab them both. Everything became a blur. Emily felt a rough hand snatch her arm, yanking her back. She struggled wildly, kicking out, but another assailant seized her from behind, pinning her arms. She saw Catherine trying to fight too, jabbing one thug with her handbag. Let me go, Catherine cried, until one of the men pressed something against her side, likely a gun, and she froze, eyes wide with fear for Emily. Do not hurt her, Catherine pleaded, breathless. Emily stomped on her captor's foot with all her strength. He cursed, but didn't loosen his grip. A cloth suddenly covered Emily's face from behind. She smelled something sickly sweet, chloroform, and panic rose at the edges of her consciousness. No, 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 was all she could think as darkness edged her vision. Her last sight was Catherine being forced into a van at the curb, desperately reaching a hand out towards Emily as Emily was dragged after her, the world tilting and going black. A single thought echoed before everything went dark: Adrian. Emily awoke to a pounding headache and the nauseating smell of damp concrete. She groaned softly, disoriented, as she tried to move and found her wrists bound behind her with coarse rope. Memory flooded back in a horrific rush. The cafe, the men, Catherine's terrified face. Emily's eyes snapped open and she squinted in the dim, flickering light of a single hanging bulb. They were in some kind of warehouse or storage facility. The floor was cold under her hip where she lay. Crates and metal shelves loomed in shadows along the walls. A faint draft carried the scent of oil and rust. She heard a soft whimper nearby. "Catherine!" Emily wriggled, managing to roll onto her side. A few feet away, Catherine was propped against a support beam, her hands bound as well, her scarf askew and face pale. "I'm here, dear," Catherine said weakly, relief washing over her features at seeing Emily awake. "Thank God, I was worried. They gave you quite a dose." Emily's head swam, but adrenaline sharpened her focus. She scooted closer until she and Catherine were back to back, trying to feel the ropes binding the older woman's wrists. Maybe she could work at the knots. "Are you hurt?" Emily asked under her breath as she fumbled. Her fingers were numb and clumsy. "A few bruises. Nothing broken, I think," Catherine replied shakily. "Emily, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I never should have asked you to meet me." "Shh, it's not your fault," Emily whispered firmly. "The blame is on these criminals." A harsh laugh cut through the darkness. "Funny, coming from you," drawled a male voice with an accent. "Russian?" Perhaps, somewhere to their left. Emily twisted her head toward the sound. A tall man stepped into the fringe of light, flanked by two of the thugs from earlier. The newcomer was in his 50s, graying hair slicked back. He wore a surprisingly well-tailored suit for someone orchestrating a kidnapping, but the cruel twist of his lips and the coldness in his eyes were unmistakable. Catherine sucked in a breath. "Antonov," she said quietly, as if naming a devil. The man gave a mocking half-bow. "Mrs. Moretti, we finally meet properly. Victor Antonov, at your service." His tone dripped venomous sarcasm. Emily recognized the surname. Antonov, one of those names whispered in news reports about gangland violence. Her heart hammered painfully, but she tried to keep her expression defiant. "What do you want?" Emily demanded, trying to keep her voice from trembling. Antonov barely spared her a glance. He focused on Catherine. "It's simple. Your son has been eating away at my business for years. Territory, contracts, influence. Like a rat chewing through a wall," he clasped, his hands behind his back, pacing slowly. "I warned him to stop, but he didn't listen." Catherine lifted her chin, regaining some composure despite her bindings. "So you resort to this cowardice? Hiding behind an old woman and an innocent bystander? Where's your honor, Victor?" Antonov's jaw tightened. "Honor? That's rich, coming from a Moretti. Your family lost the right to talk about honor when Marco—" He caught himself, eyes flicking to Emily, then back to Catherine with scorn. "When your husband double-crossed mine 20 years ago." Catherine closed her eyes briefly, as if pained, but said nothing. Emily's mind raced. The feud went back to Adrian's father. This was revenge. Antonov pulled a phone from his pocket. "Whether you think me coward or not, I have the upper hand now. Your precious son will have to play by my rules." He nodded to one of his goons. The man stepped forward and hauled Emily up by her arm. She cried out as her sore muscles protested. The thug dragged her into the center of the space under the hanging bulb. "Stop!" Catherine shouted, struggling against her ropes. "Don't you touch her." Antonov ignored Catherine's plea. He lifted his phone, aiming its camera at Emily and the thug who held her. Emily realized with a surge of fear that he was video calling someone. After 2 rings, a voice came through the speaker, low, furious, and unmistakably Adrian's. "Antonov." Hearing Adrian's voice made Emily's knees nearly buckle with relief, but the thug's grip kept her upright. She searched for the phone, but Antonov stood just out of her view. "Dobry večer, Mr. Moretti," Antonov said smoothly. "I trust you know by now I have something. No, 2 things you want." There was a split second of silence on the line. When Adrian spoke again, his tone was deadly quiet. If you hurt them, there won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in, Victor. A chilly grin split Antonov's face. Big words. But I think you'll refrain from rash action when you see my little insurance. He tilted the phone, and the thug yanked Emily closer so she was clearly in view. Emily gazed at the phone, at the tiny image of Adrian's face on the screen. His features were stony, but his eyes flared with alarm and rage as he saw her. Behind him in the background, she thought she recognized the interior of his mansion's security room, monitors glowing. He must have been coordinating something when the call came. "Emily?" Adrian said, and just her name and his voice held a world of tension and something like regret. She mustered a tight smile for the camera. "I'm okay," she lied, voice unsteady. "He hasn't hurt us. Yet." Antonov tisked and shook the phone to recapture Adrian's attention. "Listen closely, Moretti. Here are my terms. You will transfer control of the docks at Pier 27 to me, tonight, and withdraw all your men from the east side. Also, that deal you have with the city councilman. What's his name? Harding? Cancel it, publicly." Emily's head spun at the list of demands. He was basically asking Adrian to cede territory, business, and political leverage. Adrian's face darkened on the screen. "You're delusional if you think—" "I'll just hand that over." Antonov's pleasant facade slipped. He barked, "You have no leverage. I have your mother and this girl. Or do you not care what happens to your little helper here?" He jerked his head, and the thug holding Emily produced a knife, pressing the blade warningly to her side. Emily's body went rigid. A strangled sound escaped her lips as the cold metal bit through her thin shirt just enough to sting. Adrian's roar crackled through the phone. "Stop! Don't touch her, you sick—" He cut himself off, swallowing fury. When he spoke again, the effort to stay calm was evident. "Victor, let's not be hasty. You want those concessions? Fine. But I need proof of life and assurances. They'll be released unharmed once I comply." Antonov's eyes gleamed with triumph. "Agree in writing, witnessed by neutral parties, that you relinquish those holdings. Then you'll get these lovely ladies back, safe and sound. We can arrange the exchange tonight." "Adrian, don't do it." Catherine's voice rang out full of anguish. "It's everything your father built." "Hush, dear Catherine," Antonov said with a vicious smile. He moved closer to her and aimed the camera so Adrian could see Catherine now. The older woman glared at the phone, trying to appear braver than she felt. Adrian's voice softened, trembling at the edges. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Catherine managed, though tears shone in her eyes. "Don't worry about me, son. Do what you must." Antonov pulled the phone back to himself. "See? She'll be fine as long as you cooperate." "Tick-tock, Mr. Moretti. We should get paperwork drafted quickly, yes?" On the phone screen, Adrian looked down, conversing with someone off-camera in a hushed tone, likely his lawyers or advisors. Emily prayed he had some plan. He couldn't possibly give in to all this. It would gut his power. Not that she cared about a mobster's empire, but she knew surrendering would only embolden Antonov further. Who knew if the villain would even keep his word? Her eyes met Catherine's. The older woman subtly shook her head, as if warning Emily that Antonov might not honor any deal. Emily's mind raced for a way out. Her hands were still tied behind her, but the rope felt a little looser than before. She'd been unconsciously working at the knot ever since she woke. She continued to flex her wrists, ignoring the raw burn of friction. "I'll send a signed agreement to your phone within the hour," Adrian said finally, voice clipped. "But I want a meeting to hand over the originals, and for you to return my mother and Miss Carson. Somewhere public." Antonov chuckled. "You think me stupid enough to meet in public?" No. We'll do the swap at the old steel mill by the river, neutral ground, 1 hour after I get the documents. You come alone. If I even smell an ambush, well..." He trailed off, eyes drifting pointedly to Emily. Adrian's gaze shifted to her as well. She could see the torment there. He was desperate, calculating, furious. "I'll come alone," he bit out. But if you harm them before I arrive, or if you back out after I sign, you're hardly in a position to threaten, Antonov said coolly. Just be a good boy and do as instructed. Emily suddenly felt the rope give a little one. Loop had loosened over her left wrist. Her pulse skyrocketed. Could she slip free? If she waited for the right moment? Antonov resumed speaking. I'll be waiting for that paperwork. And Moretti, no tricks. Or your mother's elegant brains will paint these warehouse walls. Understood? Adrian's face was a mask of barely contained hatred. Understood, he ground out. Just, hold on, Mom, I'm coming. The call ended, the phone going dark. Antonov slid the phone away and exhaled, an ugly smile on his face. That's that, then. He motioned to the thug with the knife. The man released Emily, shoving her roughly back toward the support beam. Emily stumbled and fell to her knees beside Catherine. Catherine immediately leaned toward her. Are you all right? She whispered. Emily nodded faintly. The knife hadn't cut deep, just grazed her skin. I'm okay, she whispered back. Her fingers continued to work behind her, pulling at the slack around her wrist. She needed privacy or a distraction to fully free her hands without being noticed. Antonov's men were busy, one making calls in Russian, presumably to arrange the exchange, and another posting by the entrance as lookout. Antonov himself walked over to a shabby armchair set up near a desk, likely settling in to wait. Now or never, Emily swallowed, catching Catherine's attention. In a very low voice, barely moving her lips, she said, I think I can get loose. Don't react. Just keep talking quietly to me. Catherine masked her surprise with a small cough, then began to speak softly as if offering comfort. Stay brave, Emily, my son will come. He will. Emily bowed her head as if despairing, using the motion to hide how she wriggled her left hand, slowly, painfully, through the loosened rope loop. When he does, get down, she whispered, voice nearly inaudible. Catherine gave the barest nod, continuing in a louder tone. Adrian has resources. He won't let this stand. Whether Adrian planned an ambush or not, Emily wasn't going to wait passively and pray. If she could free herself and catch these thugs off guard, maybe she could create an opening at least enough chaos when Adrian arrives to tip the odds. Her left hand was almost out, the rope sawing at her skin. Just a bit more. One of the Russian-speaking thugs hung up his call and barked something to Antonov. Emily caught documents and, arriving, guessing that Adrian had already sent some digital proof of agreement. Good, Antonov said, sounding pleased. Fool's actually doing it. Emily's heart clenched. Adrian was sacrificing so much for them. Guilt and gratitude swirled in her chest. She hardly knew the man, and he'd treated her poorly. Yet here he was, ready to upend his empire to save them. Perhaps Catherine was right. Beneath his ruthlessness, he did have a heart. The thought steeled her resolve. She wouldn't be a passive damsel to be traded. She would fight for their freedom, whatever it took. At last, the rope slipped off her left hand. Emily nearly gasped in relief but caught herself. Keeping her now free hand behind her back to maintain the illusion of being bound, she started working on the knots around her right wrist. Time was running out. If Adrian was coming soon, she needed to act at the critical moment. She glanced surreptitiously around for anything she could use as a weapon. There, a rusted iron rod, maybe part of a shelving unit, lay on the floor a few feet behind them. If she could get to it, her right hand came loose. She was free, but she kept her arms behind her, wrists crossed as if still tied, and met Catherine's eyes. The older woman's gaze showed a mix of hope and terror, but she gave the tiniest of nods. They both understood. When the time came, they would have one chance. Emily settled back against the beam, forcing her body to appear, resigned and defeated even as her muscles coiled like a spring inside. In the distance, a faint engine noise echoed, a car or truck approaching fast. The guard stiffened, peering through the dirty warehouse windows. Antonov stood drawing a handgun from inside his coat. "Showtime," he said, licking his lips with predatory anticipation. Emily's pulse thundered in her ears. She braced herself. Adrian was coming, and one way or another, this nightmare was about to come to a head. The warehouse's corrugated metal door screeched as it was hauled open, letting in the glow of headlights from outside. Adrian Moretti stepped in through the gap, alone as promised, hands visibly empty at his sides. Behind him, the silhouette of a black SUV's headlights cast his tall frame in stark relief. Emily's breath caught at the sight of him. In the span of a few days, he looked like he'd aged years. His face was drawn tight with worry and wrath. He wore a black tactical jacket rather than a suit, and his eyes were scanning the dim interior hawkishly, likely cataloging every threat. "Adrian!" Catherine cried out, unable to keep silent. "Mom!" Adrian called back, voice echoing. His gaze snapped to where Catherine and Emily were by the support beam. Emily still kept her arms positioned behind as if bound, not wanting to give away her freedom just yet. "Ah, the man of the hour," Antonov said, stepping forward with his gun trained loosely in Adrian's direction. Two of his thugs flanked him, firearms drawn. "Very punctual, Mr. Moretti. Toss any weapons?" "Now." Adrian slowly reached into his coat and pulled out a handgun, tossing it sliding across the concrete floor. Emily noted he did it without hesitation, likely to keep Antonov at ease. He took a few more steps forward, hands slightly raised. "I'm here." "Let them go," Antonov snorted. "After our paperwork is safely verified. Where are the documents?" "My lawyer is on his way with the hard copies," Adrian said evenly. "He'll be here in 15 minutes. Antonov frowned, not expecting that delay. "We said tonight." "I assumed you'd bring them. Yourself. You assumed I'd carry legally binding documents in my pocket during a hostage situation?" Adrian retorted with a cold smirk. "They're coming. In the meantime, you have me here. Release my mother and Miss Carson as a gesture of good faith." Antonov barked a laugh. "Nice try. They stay right where they are until I'm satisfied." He nodded at his men. "Pat him down." One thug holstered his pistol and approached Adrian cautiously, frisking him thoroughly. From her angle, Emily caught a glimpse of something. Strapped at Adrian's ankle, another knife or weapon, before the thug removed it. Adrian had come prepared with a backup, it seemed. "All clear," the henchman grunted, holding up the small tactical knife he'd retrieved. He tossed it aside. Adrian's eyes flicked to Emily and Catherine again. "Are you both okay?" he asked, voice tight with concern. "We're fine," Emily answered, trying to convey steadiness. Her fingers twitched, itching to grab the iron bar behind her. Adrian's gaze shifted to her more intently, perhaps noticing something in her posture or expression. His head tilted a fraction, almost imperceptibly, but Emily caught it. Was he signaling? Trusting? Heartwarming, Antonov interrupted acidly. "Now let's get comfortable while we wait." He motioned Adrian closer. "Have a seat, Moretti, and do keep those hands where I can see them." Adrian obeyed for now, walking slowly to stand a few paces from Antonov. There was no chair. Seat was figurative. They stood facing each other amidst crates and shadows, a tense standoff of predator and prey, though who was which kept shifting by the second. Emily knew she might not get a better chance. Most of Antonov's crew were focused on Adrian, guns drawn. Only one thug hung back near Catherine and Emily, and he had his attention on the unfolding confrontation. Ever so carefully, Emily scooted her foot to hook the iron rod on the ground behind her and drag it closer. The faint scrape was lost in the echoing space. Antonov smirked at Adrian. "How does it feel, handing over your legacy? It must burn. Marco would be ashamed." Adrian's jaw clenched. "My father's not here. This is between you and me. Let my people go, and whatever score you have, settle it with me." Antonov's eyes gleamed. "Oh, I intend to. But first I'll savor taking everything from you." Emily's fingers wrapped around the cool iron bar. Her palms were sweaty. She slowly drew her arms from behind her back, hiding the rod along her leg, and carefully rose from her knees to a crouch. Catherine let out a soft gasp of surprise at seeing Emily free, but quickly coughed to cover it. The thug near them snapped his head around. "What are you doing?" Stay down, he barked, stepping toward Emily, gun aimed. Time to act. Emily exploded from her crouch, swinging the iron bar upward with every ounce of strength. The metal slammed into the thug's wrist with a sickening crack. He howled, gun clattering from his hand. Emily, get down! Adrian shouted simultaneously, seizing the moment of distraction. Chaos erupted. Catherine dropped flat to the floor as Emily had urged earlier. Adrian lunged toward Antonov just as the remaining thugs swung their weapons toward Emily. A deafening gunshot rang out, then another. The thug Emily struck was reeling, cradling his broken wrist. Emily didn't see a weapon in his other hand, so she whirled toward the next nearest threat. Across the warehouse, one of Antonov's men collapsed, taken out by a pinpoint shot to the head. The other spun in confusion. Just as a team of black-clad figures rushed in through the door, firearms blazing, Adrian's reinforcements had arrived. In the fray, Antonov stumbled back with a snarl, firing wildly. Emily's heart nearly stopped as she saw Adrian dive in front of Catherine, who lay on the ground. He shielded his mother with his body at the very second Antonov's gun went off. Boom! The muzzle flash lit Antonov's twisted face. Adrian jerked as the bullet struck him in the upper chest. No! Emily screamed, swinging the iron rod viciously at the one thug still standing near her. She cracked it across his face. He dropped with a groan, out cold. Adrian hit the floor on his side, grimacing, one hand pressed to where blood darkened his jacket. But he was alive. Body armor? Emily prayed he had worn a vest. Antonov realized his men were either down or outnumbered. With a curse, he turned and bolted toward a side door, intending to escape into the night. He never made it. A single gunshot sounded from near the entrance, sharp and definitive. Antonov froze mid-stride, then collapsed to his knees. Behind him stood Frank, Adrian's loyal guard, rifle in hand and eyes blazing. He'd put a bullet clean through Antonov's thigh, shattering bone. Antonov toppled over, screaming in pain as Frank and another operative swiftly closed in, disarming and pinning him. It was over as suddenly as it began. Silence fell, broken only by Antonov's groans and the crackle of a voice on Frank's radio declaring all. Clear, Emily, dropped the iron bar, chest heaving. She rushed to Catherine's side. Are you all right? Yes, just bruised, Catherine panted, grasping Emily's arm and already trying to crawl toward Adrian. My son, Adrian. Emily was already moving. She fell to her knees beside Adrian, who had slumped onto his back. His face was tight with pain, breath coming in shallow pants. She saw a shredded tear in his jacket and vest beneath on the left side, near the shoulder. Red was seeping out between his fingers where he clutched himself. Adrian, oh God! Emily cried, pressing her hands to the wound instinctively. Warm blood oozed through her fingers, but it looked like the vest caught the worst of it. You stupid man, you weren't supposed to get shot! He gave a weak, wry chuckle that turned into a cough. Wasn't the plan, he murmured, winching. His dark eyes flickered up to her, full of worry. You're okay? A sob of relief caught in Emily's throat. Even now he was concerned for her. I'm fine, she managed, tears blurring her vision. Just stay still. We need medics. On their way. Miss? Frank's voice came from behind as he knelt next to Catherine a foot away. He gently helped his mistress sit up and assessed her. But Catherine's attention was wholly on her son. Adrian, darling. Catherine reached for his free hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. Let me see you. Adrian turned his head towards his mother. I'm all right, Mom, he said softly, though pain laced each word. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you were dragged into this. Catherine shook her head, squeezing his hand. Hush, you saved us. That's what matters. Emily kept pressure on Adrian's wound. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably now that adrenaline was ebbing. You're going to be okay, she whispered, not sure if she was reassuring him or herself. Help is coming. Just hold on, Adrian. He gave her a faint nod, eyes heavy-lidded. Now she stood by a small table arranging a tray of breakfast that the staff had brought up. Tea, toast, and fruit. She fussed with the teapot longer than necessary, mustering courage for the conversation that hung in the air. Adrian finally broke the silence, his voice soft. Come sit. Emily, please. She turned to find him patting the mattress next to him. Even in recovery, Adrian maintained an aura of quiet command. Yet there was a new gentleness in his expression that put her at ease. Emily obeyed, perching on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling? Do you need another pillow or... He shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. I'm all right. Doctor says the bullet passed cleanly through the muscle. Missed anything vital thanks to the vest and probably my father looking out for me. He joked lightly. Emily let out a breath of relief she didn't realize she was holding. I'm glad, she said earnestly. Her gaze dropped to her hands. It's a miracle neither you nor your mother was hurt worse. Adrian reached out, covering her hands with one of his. The gesture was tentative, as if he wasn't sure his touch would be welcome. That's largely thanks to you, he said quietly. Frank told me what you did. Disarming one of Antonov's men, creating that opening. You saved my mother's life. Likely mine as well. Emily felt a flush creep up her cheeks. I just did what I could. I was so scared, but I couldn't sit there and do nothing. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. You acted with courage and selflessness. More than I deserved given how I treated you. She looked up, meeting his dark eyes. Regret swirled in them. Adrian, no, let me say this, he interjected. I owe you an apology, Emily. I misjudged you from the start. I was suspicious, cruel even. You were nothing but kind to my mother, and you showed me compassion I hadn't earned. I'm sorry. The earnestness in his tone made her chest ache. This was the guarded, imposing man who had once practically thrown her out of his home. Now he regarded her with open remorse and something that looked very much like admiration. I forgive you, Emily said softly. I understand why you did it. Well, I understand better now. Catherine explained some things about your past. What happened with people using you and with your father. You were protecting her, and maybe protecting yourself too. He nodded slightly. Trust doesn't come easily in my world. But you... He paused as if weighing his words. You've proven you're someone I can trust with anything. Emotion constricted her throat. I'm glad, she whispered. For what it's worth, I trust you too. Adrian, he looked almost surprised. Even after everything? Knowing who I am? What I am? Emily felt the cool weight of the Moretti name, all it implied, and the memory of last night's violence flickered in her mind. She also remembered the tender way Adrian shielded his mother, the raw fear in his voice when he thought Emily might be hurt, and the way he was ready to sacrifice so much to save them. Yes, she said, her voice growing firmer. I do. You risked your life for us. You have a good heart, whatever rough edges there are. And I've seen how much you love your family, how fiercely you care, even if you try to hide it. Adrian exhaled a breath as if a weight had lifted from him. His thumb unconsciously stroked the back of her hand. You make me sound far better than I am. Emily gave a tiny shake of her head. I just think I'm finally seeing the real you. They shared a long gaze, the air between them warming with unspoken feelings. Emily's heart fluttered. Sitting this close, she could see the rich brown of his eyes, the way a stray lock of dark hair fell across his forehead. Without thinking, she reached up with her free hand and gently brushed that strand back into place. Adrian's eyes darkened, but he didn't move away. In fact, he turned his face slightly into her palm as her hand grazed his temple. The gesture was subtle, involuntary, and it sent a thrill through Emily. She started to withdraw her hand, suddenly self-conscious, but Adrian caught it lightly in his own. This brought her even nearer, and she realized with a skip of her pulse that she was perched on the bed, right? At his hip now, leaning in. Emily, he murmured, her name a husky warmth on his lips. Her breath hitched. Yes? I have to confess something. His tone was serious, but a hint of that wry humor tugged at his mouth. Your pancakes are probably getting cold. Emily blinked, then let out an unexpected laugh that sounded half like a sob. She glanced back at the forgotten breakfast tray. I completely forgot about them. I'm not really hungry for toast, he said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. Are you? She understood what he truly meant, and her heart answered before her head. "No," she whispered. Ever so gently, Adrian tugged her hand, guiding her closer. She went willingly, leaning down as he raised himself slightly despite a wince of pain. Their faces hovered inches apart. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he breathed. A tear slipped down Emily's cheek, one she hadn't realized was forming. "Thank you for coming for me," she replied. His gaze flicked to her lips, then back to her eyes, silently asking. Emily closed the gap, answering him with a tender kiss. The moment their lips met, a wave of warmth rolled through her. Adrian's hand slid up to cup the back of her head, fingers threading gently in her hair as he deepened the kiss with aching carefulness. Mindful of his injury, it was a kiss of gratitude, of relief, and of promise all at once. Emily's free hand rested lightly on his chest, right over his steady heartbeat. She felt it quicken under her palm, matching her own. When they finally parted, both a little breathless, Emily dared to smile, joy breaking through the long days of fear. Adrian pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed as if savoring the peace of this contact. A soft knock at the door made Emily jolt upright, blushing furiously. It was Catherine, peeking in with a hopeful smile that turned positively radiant seeing them. "I see you two are getting along better," Catherine said innocently, stepping inside. She carried a vase of fresh flowers from the garden. "How's our patient?" "Ready to discharge himself." "No doubt," Emily quipped, still pink-cheeked, but grateful for Catherine's playful tone easing the moment. "Mother privacy," Adrian grumbled, though his lips twitched. He looked more like a scolded teenager than a feared mafia boss just then, and Emily had to stifle another laugh. Catherine set the flowers on a side table. "I'll leave you be. I just wanted to let you know, Emily dear, that I spoke with Mrs. Garcia, and she's bringing Lily over this afternoon. I thought you'd both like that." "Lily," Emily repeated, excitement and a pang of guilt flooding her. In the whirlwind, she'd hardly seen her daughter except to reassure her by phone late last night that Mommy was okay and would see her soon. "Thank you, Catherine," Catherine winked. "Frank is arranging to bring them in my car. No public transit today." With that, she headed to the door. "I'll make sure the cook prepares some cookies for a proper little tea party. Rest up, you two." Once alone again, Emily and Adrian exchanged a look, then dissolved into quiet laughter. It felt deliriously good to laugh. "She's matchmaking already," Adrian said, shaking his head with amused resignation. Emily grew shy for a moment. Do you mind?" He turned her face toward him gently. "Not at all." His thumb caressed her cheek. "I want you here, Emily, for as long as you'll have me." Something in his tone had shifted, open and earnest. The gravity of his words hung between them. "For as long as she'll have him." "Adrian, this is all so new," she said softly. "My life, our lives. They're so different. There's Lily to consider. And..." He hushed her worries by brushing a feather-like kiss to the back of her hand. "We'll go at your pace. I know I come with complications." A shadow of concern passed his face. "If at any point you feel this world is too dangerous for you or your daughter, you say the word. I'll make arrangements to keep you safe, even if that means from afar." The vulnerability in that offer, the willingness to let her go if it was best, made Emily's chest tighten. She realized in that moment that she didn't want afar. She wanted him, complexities and all. She shifted closer again and rested her head gingerly against his good shoulder. "I'm done running away, Adrian," she murmured. "We'll figure it out together. I meant it when I said I trust you." Adrian let out a slow breath and wrapped his arm around her, holding her to him. "Together," he echoed quietly. They stayed like that for a long while, drawing strength from one another as morning turned toward midday. Outside the window, the city continued on in its bustle. But inside that sunlit room, two unlikely souls found a measure of peace in each other's arms, hopeful for whatever future might bring, as long as they faced it side by side. A few hours later, Emily waited in the grand foyer, peeking through the sidelight window beside the front door with nervous excitement. She smoothed the wrinkles out of her clean blouse for the 10th time, heart fluttering as a sleek black town car pulled up the driveway. Catherine stood beside her, practically vibrating with anticipation. Adrian, still recuperating upstairs, had tried to insist he come down to greet Lily too, but the doctor had firmly grounded him in bed for the rest of the day. Instead, he would meet Lily once she was settled inside, to not overwhelm the little girl. The car door opened and out hopped Lily, clutching her little backpack and looking around. With wide eyes at the expansive gardens, Mrs. Garcia exited after her, smiling reassuringly in the direction of the house. "They're here," Emily announced over her shoulder, hardly containing herself. She threw open the door and rushed down the front steps. "Lily, baby!" "Mommy!" Lily spotted her and barreled forward with all the energy of a 4-year-old. Emily scooped her up, holding her fiercely. Tears pricked Emily's eyes as she peppered kisses on her daughter's cheeks. "I missed you so much," Emily whispered, breathing in the familiar sweet scent of kid, shampoo and crayons that clung to Lily. Lily pulled back, tiny hands on Emily's shoulders. "Mommy, you were gone forever," she declared in that dramatic way of preschoolers. "Are you okay? Grandma Garcia said you were with a friend." "I'm perfectly okay now," Emily assured her, voice thick. "And yes, I was with a very good friend who took care of me." By then, Catherine had reached them. She held out her arms hesitantly. "And who is this beautiful young lady?" Lily peeked at Catherine curiously. "I'm Lily," she said shyly, hiding a bit against Emily. Emily smiled. "Lily, sweetheart, this is Miss Catherine. She's the nice lady Mommy helped at the bus stop. Remember I told you about her?" Lily's eyes lit with recognition. "The lost lady?" "You found her," she said to Catherine, as if proud of her mom's achievement. Catherine let out a delighted laugh. "Indeed she did, and I'm ever so grateful." She gently reached to stroke Lily's hair. "Your mommy is quite the hero, you know." Lily nodded sagely. "She makes the best pancakes, too." "Oh, I'll bet." Catherine played along, eyes twinkling. "Perhaps you'll let me try one someday?" Lily gave a decisive bob of her head. "Okay, but I get the first one." "Deal." Catherine grinned. Mrs. Garcia came up and greeted Emily with a hug and a quiet, "So glad you're all right." "Mija." Emily thanked her for all her help and reassured her she could get home via the driver. Mrs. Garcia took her leave with a knowing smile, patting Emily's cheek, clearly sensing something special in the air. Inside, Lily's initial timidity melted away as Catherine led her on a mini tour of the ground floor, pointing out all the cool fancy stuff, in Lily's words. The staff looked utterly charmed by the little girl skipping through the halls. When they reached the sunroom overlooking the back garden, an array of cookies, fruit, and juice awaited on a low table just right for a child's height. "For me?" Lily gasped, eyes like saucers. "All for you, dear," Catherine affirmed. "Though maybe you can spare a cookie for an old lady?" Lily giggled and promptly handed Catherine the biggest chocolate chip cookie on the plate. Emily watched from the settee, heart swelling at the sight of her daughter comfortable and happy here. A few minutes later, Frank appeared quietly at the doorway and caught Emily's attention. "Miss Carson, Mr. Moretti is awake and would like to join you." "If that's all right." Emily jumped up. "Oh, how should we? Do you think Lily will—" Catherine waved her hand. "Bring him in." "Frank, let's not overthink it." She gave Emily an encouraging nod. Moments later, Adrian walked in, moving carefully but upright on his own. He wore a casual sweater and slacks, which made him look almost ordinary, except for the slight stiffness favoring his bandaged shoulder. Lily was too busy munching a cookie to notice at first, but Emily stood and gently touched her daughter's back. "Lily, honey, I have someone special I want you to meet." Lily turned, eyes traveling up to the tall stranger her mother indicated. Adrian offered a slightly nervous smile and crouched down slowly to be more at her level, extending his uninjured arm in greeting. "Hello, Lily, I'm Adrian." The little girl stared at him, assessing in that frank way children do. "Hi," she said around a mouthful of cookie. Emily swallowed a laugh and Adrian chuckled softly. "That cookie looks yummy. Chocolate chip is my favorite." Lily brightened and held out the half-eaten treat to him impulsively. "You can have a bite." "I have lots." Adrian blinked, clearly not expecting to be offered her snack. His gaze flickered to Emily for guidance, and she nodded, eyes warm. So Adrian gingerly took the tiniest nibble from the edge. "Delicious." "Thank you, Lily." Lily beamed, then tilted her head. "Are you Mommy's friend?" A beat of silence hung, in which Emily and Adrian's eyes met. He had an uncertain, hopeful look that melted Emily's heart. She knelt beside Lily and put an arm around her. "Yes, sweetie. This is the friend who helped keep me and Miss Catherine safe. Remember I told you someone made sure I got home?" Lily's face lit with sudden realization. She looked back to Adrian, newfound awe in her expression. "You saved my mommy?" Adrian hesitated, a slight flush on his cheeks. "Well, we saved each other, I think. Your mom is very brave." Lily threw her cookie-laden hands around Adrian's neck in a spontaneous hug. "Thank you for saving my mommy." Adrian froze for half a second in surprise, then gently embraced the tiny girl back with one arm, heedless of sticky crumbs now dusting his shoulder. "You're most welcome," he whispered, voice a little thick. Emily felt tears sting her eyes witnessing. The two people she loved most in the world hug each other. Catherine dabbed discreetly at her eyes with a handkerchief nearby. When Lily pulled back, she eyed the faint bruise visible near Adrian's collarbone. "Are you hurt?" Adrian shook his head. "Not anymore. Just a small scratch." "My mommy's a good nurse," Lily declared. "She gives me sparkly Band-Aids." "Did she give you a Band-Aid?" Adrian flashed a grin up at Emily. "She took excellent care of me." Lily looked pleased by this. Then, in the manner of children whose curiosity moves like lightning, she tugged on Adrian's hand. "Do you have any toys here?" Catherine burst into laughter. "Now that you mention it, I believe I have a room upstairs with some old toys from when Adrian was little. Shall we investigate?" "Mom," Adrian started, looking mildly mortified. But Lily was already bouncing on her heels. "Toys, can I see Mommy? Please?" Emily giggled. "Of course, but be gentle with anything antique, okay?" Catherine stood and offered Lily her hand, which Lily eagerly took. As she led the child out, Catherine glanced over her shoulder. "We'll be in the East Wing playroom. Take your time." Adrian rose back to his feet, watching them depart with bemusement. "I can't believe she kept my old toys," he muttered, scrubbing a hand over his face. Emily moved beside him, wrapping her arm through his. "I can. She keeps anything that holds love." He smiled down at her, then exhaled deeply. "That went surprisingly well, I think." "She adores you already," Emily affirmed, resting her head against his upper arm. "Though offering her cookie was a power. Move. I'll cherish that. Half-eaten cookie crumb as a badge of honor," he joked. They stood there quietly for a moment in the sun-dappled room, absorbing the sheer normalcy and wonder of the scene, something so ordinary as a family afternoon, which days ago had seemed an impossible dream. Adrian turned to Emily, gently tilting her face up to his. "I never imagined this," he murmured. "I never thought I'd have a day like today, a day with chocolate, chip cookies and cartoon stickers on your bandage," she teased softly. He huffed a small laugh. "A day where I feel at home with people who accept me, where I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder for threats because—" He paused, brow furrowing as he searched for the words. "Because suddenly there's something so much more important right in front of me." Emily's heart swelled. "We're a package deal, you know. Me and Lily." "I know, and I wouldn't have it any other way." Adrian brushed his thumb along her jaw. "Emily, She placed a finger to his lips gently. "I know," she whispered. She wasn't sure she was ready for big words yet. It was fast, and they'd been through so much. But deep down, she felt it too. Love, warm and resilient, taking root between them. He kissed her finger softly, then her forehead. "I'll spend every day earning what you've given me. I promise you that." "You already have," she replied. From down the hall, Lily's giggles echoed, followed by Catherine's delighted exclamation at some discovery. The sound made both Emily and Adrian chuckle. "Sounds like they found the vintage dollhouse," Adrian mused. Emily smiled up at him. "Why, Mr. Moretti, did you play with dollhouses?" He smirked, feigning offense. "It was my sister's, I'll have you know. I merely supervised construction." She laughed and leaned up to peck his cheek. "Whatever you say." Adrian wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close as they slowly headed toward the sound of laughter and play. In that moment, walking arm in arm through the halls that no longer felt imposing but instead strangely cozy, Emily realized how natural this felt, being at his side, with Lily under the same roof. There would be challenges ahead, surely. Adrian's life came with shadows that wouldn't vanish overnight, and Emily's life would need adjustments to fit into this new world. But with Catherine's welcoming warmth, Lily's innocent joy, and Adrian's steadfast presence holding her tight, she felt ready for whatever came next. Together they had faced danger and come out the other side. Together they would build something new, something a little unconventional, perhaps but theirs. And as Emily looked up at the man who had become her unexpected protector and partner, she felt hope shining ahead like the afternoon sun, bright and full of promise. 1 year later, the soft strains of a string quartet floated through the manicured garden, where late spring blossoms perfumed the warm air. Under a canopy of white roses and twinkling fairy lights, Emily stood in a simple yet elegant ivory gown, her arm threaded through Adrian's. Around them, a small gathering of loved ones and close confidants looked on with teary smiles as the officiant pronounced, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." A gentle cheer rose from the guests. Emily felt her cheeks already damp with happy tears as Adrian cupped her face, his own eyes shining. "We did it," he whispered, awe in his voice. She nodded, heart too full for words. With a radiant smile, she tilted up and met his lips in a sweet, lingering kiss to seal their vows. Applause and whoops erupted, none louder than Lily's excited squeal of, "Yay, Mommy and Daddy!" "Yes, Daddy." In the months following that fateful rescue, Adrian had gradually become exactly that in Lily's eyes. He read her bedtime stories, bandaged skinned knees, and snuck her extra dessert when Mom wasn't looking. When she first tried calling him Daddy, unsure if it was allowed, Adrian had scooped her up, voice thick with emotion, and told her nothing would make him prouder. Now Lily bounced on Catherine's lap in the front row, tossing flower petals from her basket in celebration. Catherine laughed, catching a few petals in her hair, and pressed a kiss to her granddaughter's cheek. Granddaughter, another new role that seemed to fill a long-standing ache in Catherine's life. She looked years younger these days, busying herself with play dates and school pickups whenever Emily would allow. Emily and Adrian broke the kiss and turned to face their friends and family. Megan, standing beside Emily as maid of honor, was dabbing her eyes and grinning ear to ear. She shot Emily a playful wink that clearly said, "I told you so," even if originally she had warned her off. Megan had come around, wholeheartedly once she saw how gentle and devoted Adrian became with Emily and Lily. Frank, and a few other of Adrian's most trusted men stood by as well, a security team doubling as groomsmen, Megan had teased. They gave respectful nods, clearly pleased to see their boss so happy and at peace. The past year under Adrian's leadership had seen a surprising shift. After the fallout with Antonov and the truce that followed, Adrian had begun steering many of his enterprises toward the legitimate side. "Less bullets, more balance sheets," he joked one night. Emily knew he did it to build a safer life for their new family. It was an ongoing journey, but one he was committed to. As the newlyweds walked down the aisle together, hand in hand, Lily scampered ahead of them as their self-appointed wedding princess. She scattered the remaining petals in her basket all over the pathway, making them laugh. Under the reception tent, sunlight and laughter mingled. Emily found herself swaying on the dance floor for the first dance, wrapped in Adrian's arms as a lilting melody played. He gazed down at her with an almost boyish joy. "Happy?" he asked softly, resting his forehead against hers as they moved in gentle circles. "More than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. Her eyes drifted to where Lily was spinning in her poofy flower girl dress next to Catherine. Megan had joined in, holding Lily's hands and twirling with her, both of them giggling. Emily returned her gaze to her husband, and marveled at how life can twist and turn. "What about you? Regrets trading the bachelor life of danger for this?" Adrian let out a content sigh. "Danger has nothing on this," he murmured, brushing a kiss on her nose. "No adrenaline rush compares to waking up with you in my arms and hearing Lily creep into our room to pounce on us at 6 a.m. Emily laughed, her heart fluttering. They had indeed settled into wonderfully mundane routines. Family breakfasts, movie nights, bedtime stories. Things Adrian once believed he could never have. He cherished with almost childlike wonder. "And no boardroom victory," he continued, "comes close to hearing Lily call me Dad, or seeing you walk toward me down the aisle." Emily felt tears threatening again. "You're going to make me cry all over this pretty dress," she chided lightly, resting her head against his chest. He held her a little tighter, swaying to the music. "I love you, Emily," he whispered into her hair, words he had been saying more and more freely with each passing day, and each time still made her glow. "I love you too," she whispered back, closing her eyes and meaning it with every fiber of her being. A throat cleared nearby, and they looked over to find Lily standing at Adrian's side, tugging his pant leg. "Can I cut in, Daddy?" she asked in a serious tone that made both Emily and Adrian chuckle. "Absolutely, Princess," Adrian said solemnly. He scooped Lily up into his arms, careful of his shoulder, which was fully healed, but still sometimes stiff. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her head on his shoulder contentedly. Joining their dance, Emily placed a hand on Lily's back, and the three of them swayed together as a family. Over Lily's curls, Emily saw Catherine and Megan watching with tissues in hand, and even Frank pretending not to wipe an eye. In that moment, Emily felt like the luckiest woman alive. What began as a small act of kindness at a bus stop had unfurled into a journey she could never have imagined, one of terror and tenderness, of risking her heart and finding it safe in the hands of a man who was once her greatest fear and now her greatest love. Their road had not been easy. It had been paved with bullets and secrets, trust hard-earned and dearly kept. But every twist led them here, to this garden blooming with new beginnings. Adrian caught her gaze over Lily's head and smiled. That special, soft smile he reserved just for her. No words were needed. In his eyes she saw the promise he'd made the day he proposed, to cherish and protect their little family, come what may. And in her own eyes, he saw the promise she'd made in return, to stand by him and brighten his world, the way he had brightened hers. As the afternoon sun glowed golden around them, and the music played on, Emily Moretti, closed her eyes and held her family close. Her life had indeed changed in ways she never expected. It was richer, fuller, and yes, far happier than any dream she might have had. And at all times, fate rewards a good heart in the most extraordinary of ways.